everybody. Welcome to our Knowledge at Noon program. I am Drusella Miranda, and I am the current interim education manager for Yellow Arts. This is just a friendly reminder to please mute your microphone and video so we can ensure a smooth streaming experience for all of us. In case this is your first time joining us, Knowledge at Noon is a free monthly speaker series featuring artists, historians, agricultural professionals that explore themes central to Yellow Arts and Yellow County historical collection exhibitions at the Gibson House and property. Let's see. So before we get started, I do have a couple of announcements. So our partner for this event is the YOLO Land Trust. Save the date for this fall on Sunday, September 12th, 2021 for their Day in the Country event. As the date gets closer, please check out their website for more information. Okay. And so today I am going to introduce the moderator for your event, which is Michelle Clark. She is the executive director of the Yellow Land Trust, which is a California nonprofit organization whose mission is to permanently conserve the farmland and ranch land in Yellow County. The Yellow Land Trust currently holds over 65 agricultural conservation easements and owns a 633-acre farm along the Sacramento River, which is leased to local growers for walnut and row crop production. Michelle is also a graduate of Class 37 of the California Agricultural Leadership Program. Prior to joining the Yellow Land Trust in 2010, Michelle was a transaction director of the California Rangeland Trust in Sacramento from 2004 to 2009, and regional counsel for the Trust of Public Land in San Francisco from 2000 to 2003. Michelle was a commercial real estate attorney for private clients before concentrating her work on land conservation. So without further ado, I am going to pass it off to Michelle to lead us in our discussion today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Drusella. Appreciate it so much. And let me first start by saying thank you to everyone who's joining us today, and in particular, our three growers. I had a little bit of trepidation about asking them to join us in the middle of the start of spring, but it just downpoured here. We had hail and thunder, so I thought timing couldn't be better. And actually, as much as most of us don't like doing things on Zoom, this works out really well since we can get two of our growers from Cape and one from West Sac, and they can Zoom in for an hour and then head back out to their farms. So to start off, I'm going to just note that March, as you may know, is the National Ag Month, and March 23rd is the National Ag Day. Last Monday, March 8th, was the International Women's Day. So it seems fitting that we're bringing these two topics together today, and really want to thank the Yellow Arts for hosting this roundtable. There was a recent study by the American Farmland Trust, which is actually a national nonprofit organization. And their statistics showed that 45% of the farmland in America, which is nearly 388 million acres, is now farmed or co-farmed by women. Based on a 2017 study or statistical analysis that the U.S. Department of Agriculture did, that was 2017, they say that in California, there are 46,000 women farmers. And that number, out of that 46,000, nearly 18,000, it's their primary occupation to farm. And so I'm really excited that you're going to meet either for the first time, or for some of you, get reacquainted with three phenomenal women who happen to farm in Yolo County. And each one of them has a unique story about how they came to farming. So how I decided to do this today is I'm going to ask each one of, I'm going to introduce each one individually, ask them a question, have them talk about it for maybe about 5 minutes. That's 15 minutes or so. Then I'll have a question that I'll open up to the three of them to talk about. And then at about 12:45, we'll open up for questions to all of you. And I think if you have questions, if you put them in the chat box, Drusella is going to be monitoring that chat box, and hopefully we'll get to all your questions at 12:45. So to start with today, I would like to introduce Judith Redman. Judith currently is one of 6 owners of Full Belly Farm, which is a certified 350-acre farm in Capay Valley. They grow fruits, nuts, vegetables, flowers, and herbs. They have chickens, pigs, sheep who roam their fields. For those of you who are not familiar with Full Belly, it's right off of State Highway 16. That's the one that goes by the casino. Far up in Gwinda, and there's a sign, you turn off. If you're going north, you turn off right on County Road 43. Full Belly was certified organic in 1985, and Judith joined Full Belly in 1989. They were awarded the prestigious Leopold Conservation Award in 2014 in recognition of their significant efforts to maintain biodiversity on the farm. They actually produce solar energy. They've made an effort to reduce excess packaging, and they support local community development. Judith is a Californian. She earned her master's degree from UC Davis with a specialty in biological control of plant pathogens. And for any of you that have been to Our Day in the Country, Judith is the artist behind those magnificent displays that we always feature of fruits and vegetables. It's absolutely amazing how she puts together this amazing display. So Judith, welcome. Thank you again for joining us. I think the thought that came to mind for me was whether you had any doubts when you first started farming in 1989 as a woman farmer, that farming was the right choice for you.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a nice introduction. Thank you very much. Those produce displays are something that I always look forward to, and I'm glad we're going to be able to do that again this fall. So our farm, Full Belly Farm, is an organic farm, and that is, I think, relevant to your question. I became interested in agriculture while I was attending UC Davis. I was getting a master's degree for plant pathology, and I got to know a lot of the farmers around Yolo County through my work at UC Davis, as well as my work with the Community Alliance with Family Farmers, which worked throughout the state at that time. And the farmers that I met always impressed me as people that I enjoyed being with, that I respected them. They had a great sense of integrity. They were pragmatic. They clearly were doing something that they love to do. So when we started farming in 1989, we never actually questioned that it would be an organic farm that we were going to start together. And I think at the time, although it's a long time ago, it might be hard to remember that at that time, the sense in institutional agriculture was that there was really no future or successful outcome for someone who wanted to be an organic farmer. It was at that time, it was a subject of research studies where they would just abandon one plot and call that the organic plot and give it absolutely no attention, and compare it with a plot that they gave all of the conventional attention and care. And then there'd be no yield in the organic, and there'd be a normal yield in the conventional. And they would say, this proves that you can't really farm organically. And this was, really good research institutions. That kind of research went on at UC Davis. And it was pretty much across the board in agriculture, the idea that you couldn't really farm organically. But in my heart, there was just a great interest in environmental issues, social issues, and a belief that agriculture was important to the future of our planet and our environment. And I think I was along with the other folks that I started the farm with, or that farmed with me at that time, we really had a great deal of idealism, and we were very excited about organic agriculture. So we even knew a lot of conventional farmers who were excited about it. So we felt like we were part of a change. And I think that story is just thinking about how far agriculture has come in California since that time in terms of our understanding of agriculture's environmental footprint. It's very inspiring. And looking back, I sort of see myself at that age and at that time as a very sort of idealistic person with very few doubts, probably have more doubts now than I did then. And I just followed my heart. So I think the answer is really at that time, foolishly, perhaps, I didn't have a lot of doubts. I was just very excited about the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Judith. Wonderful. I'm now going to introduce Becky Young. Becky is with Joe Young Farms, and she has deep family roots in farming. She grew up riding tractors with her dad, Rich, on the family farm, which is based in West Sacramento. In junior high, Becky and her sister, Melissa, sold fruit they had picked from their orchards at a fruit stand. In college, they sold produce from the farm at the Woodland, West Sac, and Elk Grove farmers markets during the summer. Becky mentioned to me when I talked with her that growing up, there was no distinction between her her sister Melissa, Becky, and their brother in terms of the type of chores that they did, whether it was at home or on the farm. So she was out, as I said, riding tractors with her dad from an early age. After college, Becky, Melissa, and her brother all left the farm and had other jobs. But in 2013, Becky and her sister Melissa, while still in their 20s, decided to quit their other jobs and return home to take over the family farm operations. As it turned out, they ultimately decided to split the workload, and her sister Melissa does all the office work, and Becky's the one out in the fields, managing the workers, managing the tractors, which seemed to break down, and running the farm. She's running the farm. Their dad, unlike some other family operations, their dad actually took a step back and is let from 2013 on, Becky and Melissa run the farm. And he's there as their backup when they have questions. But they are two sisters running this incredible family farm. So Becky, I'd kind of like to ask you a similar question that I asked Judith. What do you think the unique opportunities and challenges were that you and Melissa faced when you started running the family farm?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks for the introduction. And the way that my sister and I came back was, it wasn't necessarily out of having this desire and passion to come back and run the farm. And we didn't grow up thinking we'd always, come back and run the farm. We actually grew up, it never occurred to me, to be honest, or my sister. And as we got older, that was sort of by design from my dad. He said that when he was born, he knew his whole life that's where he was going to go. He was going to go to college and come back and run the farm. And he didn't want his kids to feel that same obligation and to not feel like they had a choice. So I honestly can never remember a time where my dad or anybody even hinted at the fact that this is where we would have to come back to, this decision with the daughters. And so after going through the college and going and getting another job in agriculture, but not in production ag, it still wasn't something that was ever thought I would ever do. And then after about 5 or 6 years, as things were changing, doing the books and also with a lot of the technology that was coming on in ag at that point, drip tape was more prevalent, GPS, a lot of things were happening. And so my sister and I thought that, we probably needed to come and do it now versus waiting till later, or waiting for my brother to come back or anyone else. So we jumped in, and I think off the bat, some of the challenges that we had, stepping onto the farm and not knowing anything about farming. I mean, literally nothing. Even though we were born out there and raised out there, we knew nothing. So not speaking Spanish, I remember was a little overwhelming in the first year. I'd have to drive to where all the guys were, and we'd kind of draw pictures in the dirt or point to tractors and things like that. But so not speaking Spanish, but then I guess if I had to take it and kind of look at it from the female aspect, I don't know really if there were any big challenges. I think that because we were girls, people had a little bit more patience with us, and they understood that, you know, my brother was out on the farm driving combine, driving tractor. He always worked on the farm, and we always did the fruit stand. So I think they knew that we needed our hands held a little bit more. And I think we got a lot more help from everyone that we worked with, and all the growers around us. We have really good relationships with because of that. And then everyone knew my grandpa and my dad and our family. So that was a big help too. So I think we actually, if I had to look back, like I said, other than not knowing anything, as far as being received by everyone else, I think it was helpful being new to this. Because a lot of times people weren't as helpful to some other friends I have that have gone back to their family farms. It's kind of like, nope, you're on your own, you got to figure it out. So,
Great. Thanks, Becky. It's really interesting to hear you characterize it as maybe you did have an advantage because you were girls in your 20s, and folks may be more willing to help you, and that's a really unique perspective. That's fantastic. So I'm going to move on to Sherry, who has her own unique story. Now, Sherry is with Capay Valley Lavender, and she is from San Francisco, as I am, but she left the city after finding a parcel of land in Capay Valley in 2016 to pursue a passion in farming. And she began planting lavender at age 64, I think it said, Sherry, on your website. So at 64, so we have this contrast with Becky, who started farming in her 20s, and we have Sherry here, who started farming at 64, and now has 5 acres of lavender, which is about, she said, 15,000 plants. She processes the lavender in an amazing array of products, such as essential oil and lavender buds, bath items, and even culinary items, such as lavender shortbread and lavender brownies. And unfortunately, because we're on Zoom, we can't share some of those, Sherry, but we'll all get together when COVID's over, and we'll have lavender brownies. The balance of her farm is leased out, and it's known as Patchwork Farms, and it's planted in herbs, figs, pomegranates, and beans. Her farm is also off Highway 16, and it's on County Road 79, 2 miles past the the Capay Creek Resort. And so, Sherry, I just have to ask you, what sparked this interest at age 64 to give up city life and move out to a small little farm in Capay?
Well, that's maybe how the words come up. And thank you for telling the story a little bit. 7 years ago, in fact, 7 years ago yesterday, my husband died. And during our 30 years of marriage, I had wanted a farm, and he always said, not on my watch. So I took a couple years to recover. And then I looked at where my life was and what I wanted to do before I died. And I always wanted a farm or a house in the country. And I wanted to build the house. So I drew a circle around San Francisco and something within 2 hours of a drive so that my friends could come visit me. That's where I looked. And I looked in Sonoma and Napa and Carmel, and that's not rural. Working with realtors who thought rural meant a gated community. And it was like, no, I want to wear boots and have dirt under my fingernails. So I found an acre in Capay Valley, 2 miles before the casino, because that becomes a story later. So I bought an acre, and thought how great, and was surrounded by 27 acres of an old almond field. And 6 months after I was there, the owner of the 27 acres sold me her land, which really was very smart of me because that way I could control who my neighbors were. And now instead of 1 acre and a golf course 2 miles away, I had 27 acres that I needed to take responsibility for. And that's when I became a farmer. And then I had to do the research on what would grow in our community, in our climate, in our soil. UC Davis is a great resource, so I took some courses there. I thought about olives and thought that too many trees, too many ladders. And then I went to a seminar on lavender, and it wants the pH of the soil, likes the climate. And, you know, within 1 day of being at a 3-day seminar, it was, I'm going to be a lavender grower. So right now I have 5 acres in lavender. And what was 12 acres that had been crop leased to a garbanzo grower will become olives sometime later this year.
What
So-
was your biggest surprise, Sherry? Making that transition from, you know, a city life to the rural life.
That was not a surprise at all. It's absolutely wonderful to walk outside, to see the seasons, to observe so much. The moon. I didn't know the phases of the moon. Things that if you've grown up here, you just take for granted. So I'm busy watching all that. I was just in Portland last weekend and heard sirens, and I realized that sirens were a nightly occurrence, and now they're infrequent. That was moving to the rural environment was just what I wanted. Being a farmer was more hard work than I ever imagined. And I'm not taking care of animals, which adds a whole nother dimension. It is hard work, and there's always work. You know, there's thank you, Judith. To sit down and read a book is something I want to savor because it doesn't happen often. No complaints. It's just this awareness of how much there is to do.
Thanks, Sherry. And that kind of is a good question that I think I'd like to, you know, ask Judith and then Becky to just talk a little bit about the physical challenges to farm, and whether those challenges, whether there's something unique about women that makes it harder, easier. And Judith, I know that you know, out at Full Belly, I've seen some of your interns at Full Belly and at Day in the Country, and I'm always amazed when these young women who are small like me lift up these enormous crates of melons where I can like lift 3, and they're lifting up a huge crate of melons and putting it on their shoulders and carrying it over to the truck. And I just am like, I marvel at it. So talk a little bit about the physical part of farming.
Yeah. Farming is definitely very physical. And I think that's probably part of the reason that it's so generally male dominated. But I have this idea of, I'm sorry, my dog is complaining. I've noticed, you know, I still go to the farmer's market, which is a 14-hour day, and feel like, you know, because I've been lifting things for a long time, it's sort of conditioned me a little bit. But I also feel like a lot of it is in people's heads and how they think about it and what kind of belief and confidence that they have and what they can do. And so, you know, with the interns, we want to encourage them to take care of themselves at the same time as they stretch and reach and try to do more than they thought they could. I think there, you know, there's a lot, you know, if people need help lifting things or carting things around, we can definitely find help for them. But also, there's a lot about endurance and stamina that is really needed more than just being able to be strong physically. It's about the sustainability of it is a lot whether you are ready to put your heart into it and work long hours, I think, is the part that can become physically taxing if you're, you know, if you don't really want a 24/7 kind of relationship with a place and a business and your work, that can become physically as well as mentally difficult. So, you know, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you can have an advantage as a woman if you can psych yourself to be strong and recognize your own your own ability to have a lot of stamina.
You know, when I quoted those statistics for California farmers, remember I said there were about 46,000 at all. That was in 2017. The materials that I have on that had it broken down by age group. And I thought this was interesting. The largest age group of women farmers, about 14,000, are between the ages of 55 and 64. The second largest group, between 65 and 74, that's over 11,000 farmers. So there could be a whole nother roundtable we could talk about aging farmers. But interesting that the two highest percentages are women, for women, are over 55. So Becky, I'm going to go to your age group between 35 and 44, and there's about 4,400 women farmers in that group. Talk a little bit, if you can, Becky, about some of the issues surrounding a woman your age and the physical demands of farming.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point that was raised, is understanding that. I think I think people are resilient, and you'd be surprised what you can do and what your body can be conditioned to do with loading planters and hauling, sacks of seed. But then I also think the reality of the physical part of it is there's a lot, especially when something's broke down, I've learned, or when you're trying to hook up equipment and machinery, and I don't have the physical strength. I mean, it just is flat out. I would, in the beginning, wrestle with trying to hook something up for an hour, and it would be so frustrating. But then you have to just suck it up and call someone to come help you. And the guys just have that physical strength for, taking things apart or hooking up implements. I remember in the beginning, I spent a lot more time setting up the cultivators and setting up the equipment and turning wrenches with the guys so I could learn how to do that. And I learned pretty quickly that I could loosen things, and there's certain equipment I could adjust, but I never want to be responsible for tightening anything. We used to tighten stuff, or so I thought. And I remember one time we had a storm coming, and I was tightening up some knives on one of our implements that had rollers in the back making beds. And I put all my weight into it, and he made a round, and sure enough, the standard slipped out of the clamp and wrapped up in the rollers, and I just ruined the whole thing. It was very expensive to fix, and so yeah, I don't tighten, but I can loosen and do what I can. But it really is just a factor, I think, of being female in farming. And I'm totally fine now with calling someone, and I don't even attempt to. They just come and help me, and I think that's another bonus, is getting help for the physical demands of the job. And then as far as my age group, it's something that my sister and I still struggle with today. Is when we came back to the farm, we had career jobs that we had gone to school for. We kind of thought our lives were going in a different direction. But when we had to come back to the farm out of a little bit more of obligation versus we felt like it was a good time in our life, being in our late 20s and then having to dedicate 6 to 7 days a week being out there, it didn't leave, it's not very conducive to relationships or starting a family. And as I'll be going into my 8th season now, and that has been a really big struggle, is even just finding the time for a personal life, let alone dating life or anything else. So you have about 2 months in the wintertime when you're not catching up on everything in the office to kind of feel like a normal person again. So my sister and I'm 35, she's 37. Neither one of us are married right now. We have no kids, and it's something that puts a lot of pressure on us, and we have a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves too, that the we would really like to have families, but there's not a lot of time. Sorry, there's not a lot of time in the day to make that happen, or trying to plan out if they, being in relationships. Okay, well, if we had to plan a wedding, or if I ended up getting pregnant, what time of year could I even get pregnant? How would we pull that off? Who would run the farm if I got pregnant and after the baby was here? And so there's a lot of conversations that we have and that we're still kind of having right now as we're trying to make sure that we don't miss out on that opportunity for our own personal lives and make that a priority, because for the first 5 to 7 years the farm was the priority, but we can't keep going at this rate, or else we may find ourselves in another 5 to 10 years missing out on something important.
Thanks, Becky. And I'm sorry for those of you who commented. It was a little bit hard to hear Becky there. But she brought up the point that she's accepted the fact that she can't tighten things as much as men, that men just tend to be stronger, and that she's not afraid anymore to ask for help. And I think, that's something that they realize that they have to do. The other interesting thing Becky talked about was being in their 30s is the issue of planning a family life, and when do you find time to plan a wedding or get pregnant, and so that kind of just hits that issue, Sherry, that you kind of started with, that it is truly a full-time job if you're going to take up farming. So Sherry, I'm going to ask you to start this question. I mean, would you recommend this to other women? Would you recommend it to women your age, to women Becky's age? Any kind of thoughts on that?
I don't think I'd recommend it because it comes from your heart. It comes from your dreams. Judith said it was just part of her nature. If I ran across somebody who said, "Do you think I should?" I would absolutely support and encourage them. But I believe it's got to start within something in your heart that says, "I want to be on the land. I want to." I have friends visit me from San Francisco, and they still think I'm crazy. I'm up here in this remote place. Well, COVID sure has helped, because we're living our life like we were before COVID. We're working every day and working in daylight. But I would support anybody who said this was a dream or a thought they had. Lavender farmers, we get people who think it's going to be easy, and some of our new farmers in our chat groups are saying, "Hey, can I make 100K in a lavender farm?" And no, and certainly not for 3 or 4 years, because the plant has to mature. So there's it's not like an annual where you're going to get a harvest the first year. You've got to have your plants in the ground at least 4 years before they're mature, and you can start making some product. So that's one of the things to make sure somebody's got some long interest in the endeavor.
And in terms of that long interest, Sherry, what's your have you planted your olive trees yet?
Nope. Hoping, trying to find availability, but maybe this October, but next April.
Okay, and then how long before you get your first fruit?
4 years.
4 years.
And I would have, before this life, hi Pup, I would have said, I'm 68 soon, and I would have said, what am I planning for? It's 74, 72. And now I can say, oh yeah, I'll only be 72. And I'll look forward to that first harvest. A change in mindset. It's been great.
That's great. And for those of you who are not familiar with olives and olive oil that's grown here in Yolo County, please try some. There's a lot of fantastic growers throughout the county, and it is we are so lucky that we have these amazing olive growers who produce really, really delicious olive oils. We have a few more minutes before our official question and answer period. So those of you who are out there, if you want to type a question into the chat, then when we get to the questions and answers, we can do that. And usually the chat button is at the bottom, and you just click on that and type in your question, and then Drusilla will see it. Meanwhile, Judith, I'm going to ask you, you know, I know that you have, when you started out at Full Belly, I think it was Drew and you and Paul, and I'm just blanking on your other part.
Yeah, Andrew.
Andrew, right, Andrew. I can see his face, I just blanked on his name. Do you think that you and Drew approached farming different than Paul and Andrew? Or whether today you do? I'm just curious.
Well, there's now actually 6 owners. So there's, and 3 of us are women and 3 of us are men. And it's, I guess in some ways, there's a sort of people's personal life experience, and then in other ways that impacts how they want to farm, and then other ways, certainly there's the impact of gender, and it's perhaps hard to tease those apart. But I mean, Paul grew up farming his whole life, and he was around a farm that was mostly male farmers, and probably decision making done there in a very different way than decision making is done on a farm where there's sort of a collaborative process involving 6 different people. So I think I'd have to say yes, probably we did approach it differently, and not sure how much of that is because of gender. I mean, Drew, just as an example, specializes in flowers and growing them, and that's become now, it's often in the top, you know, third, it's 3 crops that we grow, you know, over 80 crops that we're growing. So she's really built it into a very, very successful part of our farm, and it loves the flowers, and really believes that they're something that everybody should have around them all the time. And the beauty of the flowers just inspires her. And, you know, so perhaps she chose that because she was a woman, right? In terms of my choices, I think I see some of my powers around the farm being helping people with process and making good decisions, and getting everybody involved in conversations around decisions. And again, you might say those are some of the superpowers that women have. But it's obviously also something that I've developed in my life over time. So I think I think that it's yes in answer to your question, but it's sort of a nuanced situation.
Do you see when you're dealing with suppliers or the you know, the ag input people? I mean, was there ever a sense that you had that maybe they treated you a little different than some of the guys?
I would say that could be the case, but you know, I think there's just an assumption about what women do and don't know that can, you know, really change the way that someone's going to have, the kind of attitude that someone has. But I wouldn't say that it's ever, you know, all of our supplies and implements and all of the things that it's all out of Woodland, which is a ag town, lots, you know, tractor supplies and tire, you know, places where things get fixed and stuff. And I've had a couple experiences that were pretty amusing, where I went in to get something fixed, and people didn't realize that a lot of our accounts, instead of saying Full Belly Farm, they say Paul Muller. And so people may not realize sometimes that I'm part of Full Belly Farm. And I had this one amusing experience where someone was, you know, clearly didn't realize that I was from a farm, Full Belly Farm, and had an account there. And they gave me one story about how it was not what I wanted, wasn't going to happen. It was going to take a long time. I was going to need to wait all day, et cetera, et cetera. And then somehow they figured out, without me actually even telling them, that I was from Full Belly and part of the Paul Muller farm. And the whole story changed all of a sudden. They asked, we can take care of you. I'm so sorry. Well, and I know that it was really an assumption that they made, and the miscommunication was there in part because I don't tend to really be that pushy about it. And I just sort of assumed there was some snafu and I was going to have to wait all day. So after they told me that. So I think it can be a factor, but I think it's also something that we've learned to overcome as we've worked together over time.
Well, and having worked with Paul now for 10 years on Day in the Country, I know the doors that his name opens. When we're planning a Day in the Country, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, we bring, in the pre-COVID days, 2019 being our last event, we bring 20 to 25 chefs from throughout Northern California out to a farm in Yolo County. And we pretty much try to move that event every year. And each of the chefs creates their own dishes made from Yolo grown food. And our guests can come and sample food at any of the 25 restaurants. And we have top chefs. Chez Panisse comes. Biba herself came before she passed away. At one point we had Lena Fatt was there. Patrick Mulvaney, Rick from Waterboy. I mean, we have the really top-notch chefs. But when the Yolo Land Trust call, they don't really know who we are. And when I say Paul Muller is wondering if you can come to a Day in the Country, they always respond the same way. For Paul, we will do anything. And that has been one of the factors in our success of Day in the Country. So I see by my phone we're at 12:45. So Druella, do you have some questions that for our panel?
Yeah, we have a couple questions that we have, whether we got it via email or in the chat. And so Sarah is asking, specifically Becky, what crops does your farm grow?
Can you hear me this time? I tried to adjust it. Is that better?
A lot better. That's awesome.
So we grow a lot of the same row crops that are grown all over in Yolo County, kind of on the commercial scale. So we have processing tomatoes is one of our big crops, and sunflowers, all the cereal grains, wheat and corn and safflower. And then we grow seed crops. So we have sunflower seed, several kinds of vine seed, cucumbers, watermelon, and squash. Dry beans sometimes depending on the year, and then we have some walnuts, and for the last few years we've been growing rice also.
Awesome, thank you. And let's see. So I am super excited that we are having this talk in the month of March. As you all know, it's Women's History Month, and some folks are wondering if you feel like coming from the background that you have, being socialized as women in this world, and I think Judith, you talked on, or you touched upon it a little earlier, do you feel like being a woman kind of provides a special kind of knowledge or lens that is, pretty positive in regards to when it comes to farming? And this question's for anyone.
I'll start, because I don't know if it's being a woman, like Judith was saying, because we all have personal experiences that have made us who we are now. I do think being older, I guess more mature, or having had the life experiences that I've had, nothing really is life or death unless it is life or death. And things can happen and they're going to repair. And what I'm learning about land and plants is that they will repair, they will be better. And so I don't have the feeling of chaos or catastrophe. And maybe it's farmer, maybe it's 4 years, which is little, but 4 years under my belt, or maybe it's my personal experiences. It will get better.
I just wanted to mention that my husband works for an organization called Kitchen Table Advisors, and he gets to advise farmers that are past the very early beginning stages and into the years of farming, when they're thinking about business issues, strategic questions, how to expand, how to do better marketing, things like that. So Kitchen Table Advisors does work with fairly young farmers, and mostly farmers that are Black, American Indian, Latino, other ethnicities. So I just wanted to mention that there's many, probably half of their farmers are women, and it's very exciting to meet those people and see how successful they are and how each of their farms carries their own individual stamp. And just to see that women are there's a lot of young women that are so excited to be farmers and are with some support from their communities and from the nonprofit world are able to build very successful farms.
I guess something I could add to that is coming back and managing, being a direct supervisor for all of our guys. It's taught me a lot about communication and how I think girls, I'm just going to generalize here, but just in how girls will approach a situation, or how we have a certain mindset about things. And I think we typically want everything to be perfect, and we want all the details to be taken care of. And we don't want to just start something and have it come together later. A little bit more methodical about stuff, and especially coming to try and learn how to communicate with men and our guys. But then also when you have the challenges of weather and everything else, is I've learned to try to be more concise and just straight to the point. They don't want to hear all the fluff and the story in the background and the why sometimes. And I need to cut that out a little bit. But they just communicate and get stuff done and be able to make a decision in a split second. And that's something I still am working on. But that's been a big thing. When you have, something break down on you, you have 18 other factors going on. You have to really be able to just focus and make a decision quickly and stick with it and execute it. And I think that personally, that's hard for me. So I think we like to think about things and make sure it's the right decision and make sure we're not making a mistake. So for me, that's something that I've learned a lot. And then also with the culture of our employees, that was a really big eye opener for me and for the guys that were working for us. They'd never had a female boss before. So I thinned the herd pretty good on the first year. We had about 20 something guys, and a lot of them could not handle having a female boss, so they didn't last. And because they didn't really have any other options there. If they tried to go to my dad for a little bit of sympathy, that would make it worse for them. They learned that it is what it is, and we had to find a way to get to work together. But at the same time, it was something that I had to accept. Was in my first year on the farm, 3 of our employees had gone to jail for domestic abuse. So that was a bit it was just a reminder that, okay, we gotta learn how to figure this out. And one of those guys still works for us to this day. He's a really good person. The one that went to jail for 45 days, I never wanted to know the details of what he did, but he is no longer with us. So that added a little bit more of an element of being responsible for our guys and their culture and things like that too. But all the guys we have now, we're a really tight group and work together well.
Wow, thank you all so much for sharing. I think we have time for one last question. I think it's really awesome that we kind of have like a cross-generational group of folks here, like Sherry's fairly new, and some of you have just inherited this knowledge and the land from your family. So in your kind of journey as women farmers, what has been some of the most empowering decisions you have made as a farmer?
The most empowering decisions, is that what you asked?
That's correct.
Just following my dream and saying, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'll go one step forward, and a lot of people along the way give me advice and ideas, but thank God there's an internet and I can research. So.
Yeah, I feel similarly to Sherry in that it is very empowering to be in a job that you really love and that you care about, and also to be working somewhere that you feel has the ability to influence your community, to change your community. And I think that that's something that's been important to me throughout my time as a farmer, is the idea that water quality, people's nutritional health, climate change, many of these things that are important issues today are, we have an ability to influence them by how we farm, by the way that we think about our jobs, and to be able to act on that belief and to be able to be involved in the community in a way that I think is positive is just a very inspiring and empowering way to have viewed my business and my work. Sorry, my dog agrees.
I guess if I had to try and come up with something that would be empowering, I think it's maybe come on in the last year or two, to where I had a lot of doubt coming back and worrying that I couldn't do it. I had no idea what I was doing. Some pretty massive crop failures and bad decisions and having to learn the hard way, which still happens to this day. But a lot of the growers in the area that support me and my sister and have really look out for us and help us, and working with them, doing custom work for them, driving around, looking at their fields. And, when I think the hardest part, and to this day, is just getting that confidence that coming in, not knowing anything and trying to run this thousands of acres, out of nowhere, that if we do have a bad field or a bad stand or something happens, I would, take it very personally and think I have no business doing this. What was I thinking, trying to come back and save the farm? And I'm just making it worse. But then going out with these other guys that have been growing since they were, they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and they've been doing it their whole lives. And, oh yeah, look at this field. That one got burned up and I planted that one too deep, and, missed the irrigation on that one. And, and so learning that, we're kind of approaching to be in that same pool with them. I think that we're, everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes we have really good crops, and sometimes they, for whatever reason, call us and say, hey, how did you do that? What did you do there? Can you share your fertilizer program? What was your irrigation schedule? So that was something the last couple of years that has changed, to where it's a little bit more reassuring, maybe not as much empowering, to not doubt so much the decision that we made to come back, that, maybe it was the right thing to do. And with time, we're slowly but surely, hopefully getting there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As we are coming close to the end of the hour, I just wanted to, give a big thank you to Janice Purnell, who is the Yellow Arts Creative Director. She is the one that helped curate this event today. I also wanted to once again thank Michelle Clark of the Yellow Land Trust for moderating and getting in touch and really pulling together this roundtable discussion. And of course, to all of our women farmers here today. And just so you all know, in case you didn't, of course, COVID changed so many things, but the Gibson House is still open every Thursday from 2:30 to 5 p.m. And you can stop by to see the latest installations of what our historical collection is. So yeah, and if you want to keep in touch with all these, lovely ladies are doing in their farms, go ahead and follow them on Instagram or check out their website. And of course, follow us on social media and check out our website as well to see what we're doing for all of our Knowledge at Noon events every month. And with that, I will bid you all a good day. So thank you very much, everyone.